starting to come to him as well. You're starting to see him perform better on the defensive end, at least showing the effort that you need him to on the defensive end. So those are the things that I think are most encouraging when you look at those guards. But, you go inside to the big men, and yeah, I mean, you're right. I think at this point it is 4 guys down there as opposed to 3. Walker Kessler really was just, he was waiting for his opportunity. He finally got his opportunity, and he's made the most of it these last 3 games.
Yeah.
He has been fantastic these last 3 games. And to be honest with you, I think as we go down the stretch of the season, if Garrison Brooks continues to have those moments where he really struggles, you're going to see Walker Kessler start to take over more and more of his role, because Walker Kessler's, as far as we know, is going to be with this team next year. Garrison Brooks will not. He will be graduating and moving on. So I think that is, going to be interesting to monitor down the stretch of the season. But yeah, you talked about Armando, an extremely efficient night, what we're used to seeing from him, what we've seen from him at times this season. I think that's part of the, what's frustrating about the way that he plays the game, is that you see nights like this, and when they show up, you say, man, this guy can be so dominant for you. I mean, we even saw the mid-range game start to come to him, something that we really haven't seen a whole lot of. And you're saying, man, if we see this more consistently, it's going to be really, really hard to stop this Carolina team. But it's the question of, can that extend into the ACC tournament, into the NCAA tournament? Can you do that on a consistent basis to try to make runs in both of those tournaments? But I mean, that's the thing that's so great about now adding this 4th guy in there. We've always talked about it. One of those guys down low has to perform well for you to have a chance to win the game. If you feel good about your chances to win the game, you need at least 2 of them to play well. Now, there's not just 3 guys to pick from to have those big games. There's 4. So if 2 of those 4 can have big games, you feel confident about your chances to win games. And I mean, yeah, they were just fantastic tonight. I think the best thing about the way they played tonight, though, might not have even been the way they scored the basketball. It was the way that they were able to move the basketball as big men. They were making passes that some of our guards haven't even been making so far this season. And that's the most encouraging thing about this team, is that you can see as a whole, they are becoming smarter as the season has gone along. They're learning. That was something you just didn't see last year. It was the same team that took the court to start the year that ended the season. They were still making those same type of mistakes. They were still, they weren't growing on the defensive end. They didn't grow on the offensive end. This team is showing growth in every aspect of the game. And it's extremely encouraging to watch. And it gets you to the point where you're almost making yourself a little nervous about where your expectations are starting to get.
One of the things, and I'm glad you brought up the passing, because I think that's something that really separates Carolina's good teams from their great teams. And you look at their great teams, you can look at your 3 national championship teams, and then the team that lost in the 16 national title game to Villanova, and that 12 team that lost in the late to Kansas. They had dominant big men that could dominate you scoring the ball and rebounding the ball. But they all those teams also featured really great passers. Sean May in 05. You had Hansborough, Deion Thompson in 09. And 12, you had Tyler Zeller and John Henson. In 16, Bryce Johnson was an underrated guy passing out of double teams because he got doubled a lot in that season. 2017, Kennedy Meeks, a really good passer. You saw that tonight with your freshmen, Day'Ron Sharp, Walker Kessler, finding guys that were coming to the basket, putting the ball where it had to be for guys to catch the ball and finish cleanly. So, and it's another element of Carolina's offense that's been missing for a good bit of this year and a good bit of last year. They are a team that does use their big men to initiate their offensive sets. You don't see that a whole lot in today's basketball because it's more of a guard-oriented sport. As everyone knows, but Roy Williams and this program, they still use their bigs to initiate offense. And tonight you see why that still has value. And it's why and I'm guilty because I'm leaving tonight's a game. And now, granted, you sat here and we watched the game together. You wouldn't have thought that we won by 45 the way I was yelling and screaming and getting mad at.
They lost by 45.
I'm really excited about what this team can be because they've gotten back on the court, and now I can look at you and tell you they've gotten better. They're making progress, and that's all we've asked since the season started was to just get better as the season moves along. They're doing that, and they have a feeling of a team that's playing their best basketball as we get close to March, and no team is going to want to see come ACC tournament time, and then, of course, the eventual and all-important NCAA tournament. So, some of the things came out of tonight's game for Carolina. They did a really good job holding on to the basketball, only 11 turnovers. They forced 16, though, of Louisville, which they converted into 26 points off of turnovers, and they also scored 26 points in the fast break, another way of them making the game easier for them to get easy buckets in transition, which just really means a lot more for this particular team as opposed to other teams in the past for Carolina. They also out-rebounded Louisville 45-34. They had 16 offensive rebounds, which converted that into 14 second chance points. The only stat line that they got bested in was at the foul line. Louisville was 9 of 12. Carolina just an abysmal 7 of 18 for 39%. But all in all, the best this team has looked all season long. And the good news is that as we'll kind of transition as we start shutting this thing down, we're not going to go ahead and preview the next game, which will be against Marquette on Wednesday night in the Smith Center. But we all knew the game against Boston College got postponed due to COVID, so they were back in a situation where they had to find another midweek opponent before hosting Florida State. They found one. Marquette from the Big East will come to Chapel Hill on Wednesday night, and another chance for this team to get better. And believe it or not, this is a chance to better their resume as opposed to playing Boston College or even Miami. Even though Marquette's only 10-12 overall and 6-10 in the Big East, they still have a better net ranking than any of the potential teams Carolina could have played next week before hosting Florida State, which is going to be a really, really big game for Carolina as they try to solidify their tournament seeding. So just really good news for that. Thankful that Marquette was willing to come out and travel, because if they didn't want to come play with the season they were having, you would understand that. But that's one thing about Wojciechowski. He's going to go play teams wherever he can go take his team and play. Hopefully he's going to come to Chapel Hill and get his ass kicked. So with that, let's go ahead and shut this thing down. Once you guys get to the website, HeelToughBlog.com, where I have your recap of tonight's 45-point win over Louisville. There'll also be a segment that Mark Krings, it'll be a Krings Corner type of thing for him, as he wrote something about tonight's win as well. So we'll have you covered front to back on Carolina basketball. Anthony previewed the baseball team earlier this week. They'll have their final game tomorrow from their opening season series. We'll have a weekend recap of the Diamond Heels action, and then weekly storylines for football will make its return next week. So get all that great content on HeelToughBlog.com. On HeelToughBlog.com. Last, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on every major podcasting feed, most notably Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Podcasts. Give us a like, review me as the host, and review Anthony as the host, but we want you guys to subscribe. That way you get every podcast in your podcast feed. Well, with that, we'll thank Anthony for joining me for on tonight's podcast. We want to thank you guys for listening, and as always, go Tar Heels.